In a snow-covered, impoverished town, a 25-year-old black woman, forced to drop out of college to care for her ailing mother, works as a waitress in a worn-down diner. One night, she discovers two orphan children shivering in the cold and begins secretly feeding them from the kitchen. Despite threats, she never stops. Years later, those same children return, now grown, to save her from a cruel scheme and bring her quiet kindness back into the light. Before we dive in this story, let us know where you're watching from. We love to hear your thought. The snow had been falling all day, not gentle flakes, but thick, suffocating sheets that buried the sidewalks and silenced the streets of Halatin, a town so small it didn't even make the local weather reports. The only sound that dared pierce the wind's cry was the rusted bell above the diner door, clanging as it closed behind her. Amara Daniels, 25, exhaled a cloud of warm breath into the freezing night. She tugged her threadbare coat tighter across her chest, scarf wrapped twice around her neck. Her skin, smooth and dark like midnight syrup, was flushed from hours of scrubbing dishes and balancing trays. Her fingers ached, but her steps were steady. She walked the same route every night from the diner, past shuttered stores and flickering street lamps, boots crunching snow that had turned to slush. The cold bit at her bones, but she didn't rush. She never rushed. Not since she left college. Back then, she was Amara Daniels' sophomore in early childhood education, with lesson plans taped to her dorm wall and a scholarship pinned to her mother's fridge. But when her mother's heart began to fail, slowly at first, then all at once, Amara made her choice. Books became bills, classrooms became kitchens. Now she served eggs to men who didn't look her in the eyes and cleaned tables for tips that barely covered insulin and rent. The diner was a grim rectangle of neon and peeling paint, Marge's grill and griddle, where Barlow ran the kitchen like a forgotten war. He was tall, wide in the shoulders, with a jaw like stone, and eyes that hadn't smiled since before the foreclosure. Once they said he owned 3 restaurants. Now he wore grease-stained aprons and told Amara not to look so damn hopeful. It makes customers uneasy. He never said her name. He called her you, or worse, girl. Amara turned the corner near the old schoolhouse when she heard it. A sound soft, muffled, a whimper. At first she thought it was the wind again, weaving sorrow through the trees. But then it came again, closer now, trampling and real. Her eyes darted toward the curve in the road ahead. Headlights blinked through the snow, splintered glass catching moonlight. A police barrier glowed orange under flashing sirens, casting strange shadows on the asphalt. A mangled sedan lay at the foot of a telephone pole, steam hissing from its hood like a dying thing. Officers stood around it talking low. A body was covered in a white tarp near the ditch. 2 stretchers loaded into ambulances. No screaming, no crying, just silence. Then she saw them. 2 children sat hunched in the snow behind the barrier. No jackets, no hats, just skin and fear, and a thin layer of frost gathering in their hair. The boy looked 12, maybe younger, holding the girl, no more than 8, tight to his chest. Her face was red from crying, eyes vacant, hands bare. No one noticed them, or maybe no one cared to. One officer glanced in their direction, then turned back to his notepad. A woman in a parka muttered, "Poor thing," and kept walking. A man lit a cigarette. Amara froze. Her pulse beat loud in her ears. She didn't move for 3 seconds. Then she stepped forward through the snow, past the line. "Hey," she whispered, kneeling before them. "You're freezing." The boy flinched, pulling the girl tighter. "Don't touch her." "I won't. I promise." Amara's voice softened. "My name is Amara. I work just down the street." The girl peeked at her through tangled curls. "Where's your mom?" Amara asked gently. The boy didn't answer. She looked at the scene again. The tarp, the sedan, her breath caught in her throat. "I'm so sorry," she whispered more to herself than to them. Then she did what no one else had done. She opened her arms. "I'm not going to leave you," she said. "Not tonight." The girl leaned in first slowly, cautiously, like a wounded kitten testing a stranger's palm. Then the boy. He didn't cry, just folded into her chest with a kind of silent fury, like he knew this world didn't owe him anything. Amra held them both as snow fell harder, soaking through her coat, numbing her knees. She rocked them, whispered nothing words like, "You're okay now and I got you." Her hands trembled, but she didn't pull away. Behind her, the journalist from the Hailton Post paused, raised his camera. The shutter clicked. The flash glowed white against the falling night. Later, the rescue workers took the children in. They asked for names. Amara didn't know them. She only knew that the girl had stopped shivering. And the boy, Eli, she would learn later, had looked at her one last time before being led away, like he was trying to remember her face. She stood alone at the edge of the scene, soaked through, too cold to move. But her heart burned like a lantern. The town would forget that night, but the snow never did, and neither did Amara. It began 3 nights after the accident. Mara was wiping down the counter long after the last customer had left and the buzz of the coffee machine had gone quiet. The diner smelled like old grease and burnt toast, familiar if not exactly comforting. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, the storm having passed but leaving behind piles of snow crusted with ice. Most of the town was asleep, but Amara wasn't watching the clock. She was watching the back door. A soft knock came once, then twice. She didn't jump. She'd been waiting. Slipping off her apron, she moved toward the kitchen, passing the humming refrigerator and grabbing a napkin-wrapped bundle from a brown paper bag she'd packed hours ago. It wasn't much. Half a grilled cheese, 2 boiled eggs, a handful of mashed potatoes, and the last corner of a blueberry muffin someone hadn't touched. Not garbage, just unwanted. She cracked the door open. They were there. Eli stood in front, his shoulders squared like he was bracing for rejection. His coat didn't fit, probably scavenged from a charity bin. It hung heavy on his too-thin frame, sleeves covering his fingers. Na clung to his side, eyes wide but hopeful. Amara smiled. "Hope you're hungry." The bundle exchanged hands without a word, and then the smallest thing. Na's face lit up, not wide, not dramatic, but a flicker like the glow of a candle catching. Amara watched them hurry off into the dark, back to wherever they were hiding. She didn't ask. She didn't want to know. If she knew, she'd never sleep. The next night they came again, and the next. No words were needed. She just handed off the food, a nod here, a whisper of thanks there, and always the way they tore into the bread, like it might vanish in smoke if they didn't eat fast enough. But on the 6th night, Eli lingered. He didn't look at her directly when he spoke. "Can I work?" Amara blinked. "What?" "I can clean or take trash out. You shouldn't have to feed us for nothing." The way he said it, so firm, so adult, it struck her. He wasn't begging. He was offering, bargaining with whatever pride a 12-year-old could still hold on to after watching his parents die in the snow. "I appreciate that," she said quietly, "but you're too young. If they see you here, it could get me fired." His mouth set in a hard line. "But I can help." "I know," she said, kneeling a little. "You already are by showing up, by staying alive. That's more than enough." His lips parted like he wanted to argue, but he stopped himself, just nodded, clutching the warm paper bag to his chest. Na stood behind him, tracing shapes in the frost on the door. Then just like that, they disappeared into the dark. It should have ended there. A secret kindness, a fleeting exchange. But secrets in Heighton didn't stay quiet for long. Barlow saw them. She hadn't meant for it to happen. He must have stayed late, inventory or counting quarters. She'd barely cracked the door when his voice thundered from behind the kitchen doorway. "So, this is what you do with our leftovers." Amara stiffened. Slowly she turned, hiding the bag behind her back. "It's food no one ate. It would have gone in the trash." His boots echoed as he stepped closer, thick fingers pointing like accusations. "You think this is some charity, huh? You want to play savior? Use your own damn kitchen. They're children, Barlow. Not my children, not your responsibility either." He leaned in, so her breath warm and hateful. "You want to keep this job? You stop handing out freebies like your mother Teresa. Next time I catch you, you're out. Understand?" She didn't answer. He barked, "Do you understand?" She nodded once slowly. That night she didn't sleep. Her mother noticed. Of course, even through the creaky door of their shared apartment, even while knitting by the weak yellow glow of the hallway lamp, Mama always noticed. "I don't want you worrying." Amara said as she helped her into bed, adjusting the pillows under her back. It's nothing. You only lie when it's something, her mother said, voice thin but calm. So tell me. So Amara did. She told her everything, the accident, the children, the food. Barlow. Her mother listened quietly, the rhythm of the needles slowing until finally she reached across and took her daughter's hand. You remember what I used to tell my students? She whispered. Amara smiled faintly. You told them a lot of things. I told them this. When you help someone at the moment they need it most, you change the rest of their life, even if they don't know it yet. Tears stung at the back of Amara's eyes. She squeezed her mother's hand. I just didn't want them to feel invisible. You saw them, her mother said. That's enough to light a fire in the cold. The next night, Amara didn't take leftovers. She paid for the food, whatever she could afford, usually something small, sometimes just a sandwich split between two paper bags. She packed it quietly, labeled it waste to avoid questions. It wasn't much, but it was warm. It was enough. And then one night, Na handed her something, a lumpy, uneven square of yarn, blue, scratchy, roughly stitched. A scarf. We made it, she said softly, peeking over the counter edge. Eli helped. You gave us warm food. We wanted to give you something warm, too. Amara held it like treasure. Her throat clenched around the words she wanted to say. She pulled the scarf around her neck and smiled, tears shining in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. This is the warmest gift I've ever had. Eli said nothing, just folded his arms, but there was a hint of pride in his chin, a flicker of something more than survival in his eyes, something starting to grow. It was a Sunday morning in early spring when the world, just for a moment, tilted out of place. The sky was unusually clear, washed in pale gold, and softened by a breeze that hinted at the end of winter. The bell above the diner door hadn't rung yet. Amara was setting up tables, humming to herself as she refilled sugar jars and straightened the chairs. She was tired, but it was the quiet kind of tired that made her feel useful. The scarf Na had given her still hung by the coat rack, faded now, edges fraying, but she refused to leave it at home. It was her talisman. Then came a knock, not at the back door, not the soft code tap she'd come to expect during those cold nights, but a bold rhythmic knock at the front window. She turned, and for one beautiful, impossible moment, she couldn't speak. There they stood, framed by the morning sun, like characters out of a dream. Eli in a collared shirt that actually fit him for once. Clean jeans, polished shoes. Na wore a yellow dress under a gray coat, her braids tied in soft pink ribbons, cheeks bright as apples. They looked new, not in a superficial way, but in a deep, radiant way, like they'd finally had a full night's sleep in a bed that was truly theirs. Mara opened the door slowly. You two? What? We came to say goodbye, Eli said. Her heart dropped and soared at the same time. Goodbye. Na nodded, eyes shining. Our aunt, Mama's sister. She found us. She lives in Canada. She saw the picture, the one from the newspaper. Namara's breath caught. That photo, the one the reporter had taken the night of the accident, the night she'd knelt in the snow and held them like they were hers. She hadn't thought about it in months, but someone else had, someone who remembered, someone who cared. She came last week, Eli added. Legal stuff took a few days, but she's taking us back with her today. Amara pressed her fingers to her lips. For a moment, she couldn't feel the floor beneath her. They were leaving, not just the town, but the shadow it had cast over them, and they were smiling. We wanted to see you one last time, Na said. Then without another word, she reached into her coat and pulled out something wrapped in wax paper. But it wasn't food. It was flat, rectangular, and slightly bent at the corners. She unwrapped it slowly. A drawing, handmade in colored pencils, rough around the edges, but full of soul. A figure in the middle of a storm, dark skin, kind eyes, arms stretched wide like wings. Behind her, two small figures curled close beneath the shelter of those arms. Snow fell around them, but none of it touched them. The sky in the picture glowed. You, Na whispered, placing it in Amara's hands. Were our angel that night? Mara couldn't hold back. Her chest broke open as she knelt down and pulled them both into her arms. They were warm, solid, breathing, safe. She didn't cry for sadness. Not this time. These were not tears of loss. They were something deeper, older. The kind of tears that come when you realize maybe, just maybe, goodness doesn't get swallowed by the world after all. She held them tight, then leaned back to look into their eyes. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "You're going to have a beautiful life. Don't forget who you are." "We won't," Eli said, his voice barely more than a breath. "We'll write to you. We'll call if we can." Amara smiled through the blur. "You better." They hugged once more, and then they were gone, walking hand in hand down the sidewalk toward a waiting car with a woman in sunglasses and a kind smile holding open the door. Nina waved. Eli looked back one last time, and then they disappeared. She stood there for a long time, the drawing clutched to her chest, the morning sun now warming her face instead of her bones. 15 years passed. Seasons changed. People came and went. The diner eventually closed down, sold to a chain that served powdered eggs and watery coffee. Amara moved on. She married James, the bony, good-natured line cook who used to slip her extra pancakes on bad days. He'd always had quiet eyes and soft hands. They opened their own place on the far side of town, a small brick building with wide windows and ivy curling around the roof. They called it Little Flame. Inside, the smell of rosemary biscuits and lentil stew welcomed everyone equally. No suits, no uniforms, just people and plates and warmth. Amara's mother never got to sit at one of those tables. She passed 5 years into their marriage, gently, peacefully, with Amara holding her hand. In her last breath, she whispered, "Keep that heart, child. The world needs it, and so do you." Now Amara wore her scarf, still blue, still fraying, and kept the drawing in a gold frame above the register. Customers always asked about it. Some thought it was religious. Some said it looked like a guardian spirit. Amara just smiled. "It's a memory," she'd say, "of a time I remembered who I wanted to be." And on cold mornings when the light caught the frame just right, the angel in the snow seemed to shimmer like it was still watching, still guarding, still waiting for the next soul to shelter. It began with whispers, the kind that trickled through town like a cold draft under a locked door. A cough here, a cramp there. Someone's aunt said her stomach hadn't settled since lunch. A teenager posted a video saying she felt sick as hell after eating a bowl of lentil stew. By nightfall, rumors had become headlines. Food poisoning at Little Flame, outbreak in Hattitin, diner under fire. Amara didn't see the first wave coming. The day had started like any other. Sunlight through the window panes, her daughter's laughter echoing from the kitchen as James flipped pancakes. Tables were full, regulars chatting warmly. Someone even left a tip shaped like a heart, and then the front door slammed open. A crowd. Not just a few, dozens. Angry, loud, confused. Faces she knew. Neighbors, former customers, strangers with phones filming her every move. The accusations came fast. "I ate here yesterday and I've been throwing up since dawn. You fed my nephew raw chicken. You're poisoning people to save money." Amara stood behind the counter, heart pounding so loud it filled her ears. She opened her mouth to speak, but the noise swallowed her. Cameras flashed. Someone threw a napkin holder. A child started crying. And then she saw him, Barlow, standing at the front of the mob like a conductor with no music. Same heavy frame, though now weighed down with bitterness and resentment, his beard unkempt, eyes glassy with victory. "I warned y'all," he shouted, arms outstretched like a preacher at a funeral. "Told you this place was a front. Told you she'd cut corners to make a buck. You just didn't want to listen." The crowd roared. Amara's knees weakened. Barlow turned toward the police officers, now pushing through the crowd. "She should be arrested," he declared, voice low and venomous. "This ain't just a food violation. It's endangerment, attempted manslaughter. Maybe kids got sick. Families got sick." "That's not true," Amara said barely above a whisper. "You calling everyone here a liar?" he snapped. "You poisoning people and smiling while doing it. You think just 'cause you hand out free bread with soup, you're a saint?" Amara looked to the officers. They didn't meet her gaze. One of them took out handcuffs. Her chest tightened. Her hands began to shake. James came running from the back, ushering their daughter behind him, eyes darting wildly. "What's going on?" he barked. But the officer raised a hand to him. "Sir, please stay back." Her daughter's face peeked from behind his leg, confusion clouded with fear. "I didn't do this," Amara whispered half to herself. "I've never hurt anyone." But no one heard her, or worse, they didn't care. The shouting reached a fever pitch. The law didn't need facts when the town had made up its mind. It was the kind of scene Amara had only seen in nightmares, one where your past good can't speak loud enough over a present lie. And then, out of nowhere, the sound of tires crunching gravel. A sleek black car pulled to the curb, polished to a mirror sheen, windows tinted, engine humming like a held breath. Everything stopped. The crowd parted like water as a tall man stepped out from the passenger side. Young, sharp, suit tailored to perfection, he walked with the quiet confidence of someone who had nothing to prove and everything to protect. Behind him came a woman in a charcoal coat, familiar in ways Amara couldn't place, and a technician in jeans carrying a small black case. The man didn't say a word at first. He took in the crowd, the building, the signs of chaos. Then his gaze landed on Amara, and he smiled. Not with smugness, not with malice, but with memory. Mara's breath caught in her throat. Something stirred in her chest, a warmth buried under layers of fear and disbelief. She didn't know yet why he was here, who he was, or what he intended. But something in her bones told her. She had seen that smile before. Once, long ago, through a veil of snow and silence, the man stepped closer, past the police, past the doubters, past the lies still hanging thick in the air. His voice came steady and smooth, but it carried weight, the kind that silenced people mid-breath. "I'd like to see the kitchen," he said. The officer hesitated. "Who are you exactly, sir?" The man reached into his coat, pulling out a card and showing it to the officer, then to the crowd who leaned in, curious and confused. Ely Marin, CEO, Hearthstone Culinary Group. Gasps stirred like wind rustling brittle leaves. Hearthstone, an empire. 5-star restaurants across 3 continents, television appearances, philanthropy awards. A name you didn't hear in Hitton unless it was on TV. But Ely, the boy from the snow, felt her knees tremble. Her breath caught, her hands trembled, and still she couldn't speak. Na stepped forward then. Taller now, elegant, her fingers ink-stained, her coat stitched with a sunflower pattern. She didn't speak either. She simply took Amara's hand, squeezed it tight, and nodded. That same nod she used to give from behind Eli's arm when the world felt too cold to face. "We never forgot you," Nina whispered. Ely turned to the technician. "Sam, run the analysis." Sam crouched near the side alley entrance, opening his case and pulling out a small device connected to a monitor. "Mainline water intake runs behind this wall," he said, fingers flying across a touchpad. "Kitchen pipe is accessible through the external duct." "There's no camera back there," Barlow said loudly from the crowd, voice shrill and defensive. "They'll find nothing. This is just grandstanding." Eli's eyes didn't move from the screen. "There's always a witness," he said, more to himself than anyone. And then Sam lifted his head. "Found it." The monitor showed a time-stamped sequence. Low res, grainy, but clear enough. A man in a thick coat crouched behind the diner. He reached into his pocket a small plastic bag. A gloved hand unscrewed the service valve and poured something into the kitchen's water line. The face was obscured until he turned just slightly, and the old security light caught his profile. The silence after the footage ended was thick, dense with shock, shame, and the cold realization that a storm had just changed direction. On the screen, frozen mid-same, was Barlow. Not some shadowy figure or vague outline, but Barlow, clear as day. His thick frame hunched beside the diner's outer wall, gloves tight around a plastic bag, his breath misting in the cold air as he twisted open a service pipe behind Little Flame. The snow around him glowed under the security light, casting harsh shadows. And then the turn, that brief glance upward, just enough for the side of his face to catch the light. There was no mistaking him. The scar above his left brow, faint but unmistakable, had always been a mark of his temper. earned during a rage-fueled slam of a kitchen cabinet years ago. Amara had seen it nearly every day she worked under him, as he barked orders and lashed at everyone who reminded him of his own failure. Now the scar told a different story. The crowd, once so loud and eager to condemn, seemed to fold in on itself. Someone in the back muttered, "Jesus." Another man took a slow step backward. A woman pulled her child closer to her side, as if realizing too late the true danger hadn't come from the woman behind the counter, but the man who had stood beside them all along. Barlow didn't move at first. He blinked, opened his mouth, but no words came. When he finally found his voice, it was thinner, stretched with desperation. "That could be anyone," he said, half laughing, half pleading. "Come on, grainy footage. You can't arrest someone over that." Eli, standing beside the technician, didn't even turn to him. His eyes stayed on the frozen screen. Check the timestamp. Cross-section it with the delivery logs. The water contamination began precisely 40 minutes after this moment. No one else had access to that intake pipe. No one except you. Barlow's face flushed, then palled. He turned to the police officer closest to him. You know me, Rick. You know me. I ran kitchens in this town for 30 years. This woman, she's manipulating you all. She's got tricks, sympathy, some kind of story, but she's not clean. She's been lying. She's always been playing the part. The officer, a man in his 40s with heavy eyes and a badge that looked too polished for such an old town, shook his head. "I know who you are, Barlow. That's exactly why this makes sense." Another officer stepped forward. "Barlow Denton, you are under arrest for tampering with food infrastructure, criminal endangerment, and conspiracy to cause public harm. Turn around and place your hands behind your back." Hands hovered in the air, shaking. No, this is ridiculous." But he didn't resist. When the cuffs closed around his wrists, the click was soft but final, like the closing note in a rakook. He was marched through the crowd, eyes wide, lips tight. He looked toward the people he had once treated to coffee, who had nodded at him on sidewalks, who had once feared him and respected him in equal measure. But now they averted their eyes. One woman hissed through clenched teeth, "You poisoned my niece!" Someone else spat near his shoes. He was no longer the powerful one in the room. He was a man undone. As he passed Amara, he dared to meet her eyes. For a moment the hate was gone. So was the arrogance. In their place was disbelief. Pure bone, deep disbelief that the woman he'd stepped on, dismissed and mocked, had survived him. But Mara didn't look away. She didn't need to say a word. The world had finally seen as the murmurs faded and the squad carrying Barlow rolled away down the street. Amara stood in the soft hush that followed, like the world had been held in tension, and now dared to exhale. The screen was off. The evidence had spoken. The storm had passed, but the emotional weight hadn't left her chest. She turned toward the man who had made it all happen. Eli, his suit was clean-cut, his face older, defined now, not in the way of years lost, but of purpose earned. But there was something unchanged, something in the eyes, in the stillness of his posture. He wasn't a boy anymore, but Amara knew those eyes. She'd once watched them fill with snow and sorrow as he clutched his sister in the dark. Now they looked at her, the way a man might look at a lighthouse after crossing an endless sea. "Eli," she whispered, just the name, and in that one word, everything returned. The snow, the hunger, the quiet knock at the door, the scarf, the fire she tried to keep lit when the world around them had turned to frost. He stepped forward. "It's been a long time," she nodded, voice catching in her throat. 15 years. Na appeared beside him, taller now, regal in posture, dressed in muted tones save for a splash of blue. A painted scarf draped over one shoulder. Her hands were stained faintly with charcoal and color. Nails trimmed short. Amara gasped softly as she realized those were the hands of an artist. The little girl with red fingers and hungry eyes now created beauty for the world. "You both look." Amara didn't finish. Na smiled gently. "We became what you believed we could be." And then she reached into a long canvas case slung over her shoulder. Carefully, reverently, she pulled out a framed painting wrapped in soft cloth. She peeled back the covering. It was her, Mara, in the snow. Kneeling, arms open, the folds of her coat painted in deep earth tones, her scarf catching light like stained glass. Behind her, two small children wrapped in her warmth. Snow whirled around them, but none touched them. The storm had no power where she knelt. The painting glowed. Tears spilled down Emra's cheeks. She touched the frame with trembling fingers. "You painted this?" Na nodded. "It took me years to finish. I had to wait until I was strong enough to face that night again." Amara's voice was barely audible. "Why bring it here?" "Because this is where the story began," Eli said quietly. "And where it should be honored." She looked from one to the other. "You saved me today." Eli shook his head. "You saved us first. We only returned what you gave freely." They embraced, the three of them, in the quiet awe that comes from knowing something profound has come full circle. She held them as she once did, and for a moment, despite the years, despite the noise, they were once again three souls in the snow, clinging to one another for warmth. Weeks later, the painting now hung in the heart of Little Flame above the mantel, framed in mahogany, lit by soft amber sconces. Visitors stared at it, moved not just by its artistry, but by the spirit it carried, of survival, of memory, of one woman's quiet refusal to stop caring. Below it, on a brass plaque etched in calm script, "Kindness needs no proof. It lives forever in those who are rescued from the dark." And every evening before closing time, Amara would stand beneath it, her hand brushing the frame, her heart steady, her eyes lifted, not in sorrow, but in gratitude. She had not been forgotten. She had been remembered. And through her, the town had remembered something of itself. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.